This is an easy way to do these individual stockings. First, you want to select your fabrics. These are both directional, so I want to make sure everything's right side up. When I place my pattern on the fabric, I make sure that it is in the correct position. I trace around the pattern with a pen. I then pin my two pieces of fabric together before cutting them out. I do like to cut the top of the stocking using a pair of straight scissors, and then I cut around the sides using a pair of pinking shears. I'm cutting close to the outside edge of the drawn line all the way around the stocking. Keeping the stocking pinned together, I'll take it over to my sewing machine and sew as close to the edge as I can, using the edge of my foot as my guide along the pinked edges of the stocking. When this is done, I take the stocking over to the ironing board and iron the seams flat at the top of the stocking. I find this makes it easier to put the cuff on the stocking itself. Next, I want to make sure I have a piece of fabric cut and sewn for the loop. I take a 2-inch strip of fabric and fold it in on itself and then stitch down one side. Next is a piece of fabric for the cuff, and I iron it in half the long way. The cuff should have actually been pinned upside down. Here I am lining up the middle of the cuff with the middle of the front edge of the stocking. I'm going to pin it towards the back of the stocking from each side. Once I get toward the back of the stocking, I'm going to leave 3 or 4 inches unpinned. I am now going to use a pin to line up with the back seam of the stocking. I'm then going to do the same thing with the other edge of the cuff. Pinning in an upward direction here makes it easier when you take it over to the sewing machine to line things up and not have your fingers get in the way of removing pins. Pushing the stocking away from the cuff, I'm then going to line up those 2 pins and then take it over to my sewing machine and sew down the seam. Since our stockings are always slightly different size, I found that this was really helpful in making sure the cuff fit the body of the stocking. Sometimes it's a little squirrely getting it lined up, but then I sew down the whole edge of the cuff. Once that is done, you pull the body of the stocking and line it up with the cuff. Then you're going to slide your folded 6-inch loop between the 2 layers, putting the edges up at the top of the cuff and top of the stocking. I do line it up in the middle of the seams and then flatten out that cuff seam. Pin or clip the layers together before sewing. I find that it's easier to sew around on the inside of the stocking using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, back stitching over where the loop is so that it's nice and strong. Now we are ready to turn the stocking right side out. To finish this nicely, I take it over to my iron, pulling out all the seams and ironing it all flat. I feel that this just makes it all look more professional. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and that you get addicted to making lots of stockings for this project.